Welcome to First Do No Harm with Massachusetts Citizens for Life board member and physician Dr. Mark Rollo. This broadcast will focus on medical ethics from a Catholic perspective and address abortion, physician-assisted suicide, contraception, natural family planning, IVF, healthcare proxy, and other topics. Please be advised that this show may not be appropriate for children under 13.
Hello and welcome back to First Do No Harm, a show about medical ethics from a Catholic perspective. I'm Dr. Mark Rollo. Last time in part one of my interview with Massachusetts Family Institute President Andrew Beckwith, we discussed how the United States of America has begun to regain its sanity. The Supreme Court of the United States reversed the infamous Roe v. Wade decision of 1973, which was egregious from the beginning, as Justice Samuel Alito asserted. After nearly 50 years of the slaughter of the innocents, we have begun to restore our legal and moral bearings. Millions of preborn babies will no longer be indiscriminately killed. Inconvenient life will no longer be snuffed out with impunity. Death will cease to be a constitutional solution for a social problem. The Supreme Court, for now, has resumed its constitutional role of judging law, not making law. Truly, this is a time for celebration. However, just as millions of innocent human beings will be saved, millions more will still be considered as disposable. The atrocity of abortion will continue unabated in states like California, New York, and right here in Massachusetts. And so we in the Commonwealth have our work cut out for us. And in many ways, our work has become even more difficult because the rage brought forth by the culture of death has targeted many, including volunteer organizations that seek to help women with problem pregnancies. Pregnancy resource centers are under attack in Massachusetts and across the country. As the death chambers of Planned Parenthood and the like quietly close across the country in response to the rule of law, many abortion proponents have resorted to law breaking. Today I will play part two of my recent interview with Andrew Beckwith, president of Massachusetts Family Institute, an organization dedicated to strengthening the well-being, health, and safety of families, including the unborn, in Massachusetts. We will discuss how pregnancy resource centers are being vandalized by pro-abortion terrorists and targeted by government entities, despite the fact that their only mission is to save babies and help their mothers. I will also play part of an interview with the director of 2 of the roughly 30 pregnancy resource centers across the state. Her name is Kelly Wilcox, and she is the director of the Clearway Clinics of Worcester and Springfield. She will reflect upon her work and that of many selfless volunteers who seek to bring God's saving grace into the lives of many. Before we continue, let us pray, for as stated by the U.S. Catholic bishops, only with prayer that storms the heavens for justice and mercy, prayer that cleanses our hearts and souls, will the culture of death that surrounds us today be replaced with a culture of life. Revelation chapter 12, verses 12 through 17, reads this way: Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great fury, and he knows he has but a short time. When the dragon saw that it had been thrown down to the earth, it pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle, so that she could fly to her place in the desert, where, far from the serpent, she was taken care of for 1 year, 2 years, and a half year. The serpent, however, spewed a torrent of water out of his mouth after the woman, to sweep her away with the current. But the earth helped the woman, and opened its mouth and swallowed the flood that the dragon spewed out of its mouth. Then the dragon became angry with the woman, and went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring, those who keep God's commandments and bear witness to Jesus. Oh God, please help the Pregnancy Resource Centers of Massachusetts. Give them eagle's wings as they fly in to rescue women sought by the serpent, spewing a torrent of water out of his mouth to be swept away with the current, and save her offspring from the dragon who seeks to devour them. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. And now here is part 2 of my conversation with Andrew Beckwith, president of Massachusetts Family Institute, which will be followed by part 1 of my conversation with Kelly Wilcox, director of Clearway Clinics of Worcester and Springfield, Massachusetts. And actually, this kind of gets to something you just told me before the interview, that you have some breaking news, which at the time of the airing of this program won't be breaking anymore, but you just heard of
Sure.
something that happened at a local pregnancy resource center. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was just brought to my attention that last night, maybe early this morning, 2 pregnancy resource centers in Worcester, so the Clearway Clinic and Problem Pregnancy, both were vandalized with windows being smashed and spray paint on the facilities and the sidewalk in front of the facilities with the name Jane's Revenge. So it looks like it was that pro-abortion terrorist group has been active, and fortunately no one was hurt. But we're seeing this pop up all over the country. And in the wake of the leak of the decision for Dobbs, there were, as of a couple weeks ago already, well over 50 acts of pro-abortion violence targeting pro-life groups all over the country, including my counterpart, the Wisconsin Family Policy Council, was firebombed. Windows broken and some kind of a Molotov cocktail or something, but there was extensive damage to their facility. Again, fortunately, no one was hurt, but this is the pro-abortion extremists lashing out in anger, and it's not enough. Again, in Massachusetts, as we talked about, very few, if any, meaningful restrictions on abortion, but that's not enough. They want to go after, harass, intimidate, and target pro-life groups that are just trying to help women keep their babies. It's so dark and cynical, and the physical violence isn't even the worst part. As horrible as that is, the biggest threat, I think, at this point, is you have everyone from Elizabeth Warren on down on the left starting to agitate for laws or local ordinances that would restrict the free speech of these pregnancy resource centers, specifically targets them. And the law's all boilerplate, so it's all coming probably from Planned Parenthood. We've seen this in Connecticut and multiple places in Massachusetts. It's all the same language. It specifically targets pregnancy-related centers that do not perform abortions and seeks to fine them if they commit what are quote-unquote deceptive practices. Of course, doesn't define what that is.
Yeah, right.
But if you have a pregnancy resource center that tells women, well, your options are you can keep the baby, or we have to put the baby up for adoption, but they don't mention abortion, well, that's a deceptive practice by omission. Potentially, they'd be fined. But if a Planned Parenthood clinic says, well, you can abort your baby or keep it and don't mention adoption, they won't even get looked at, because these bills only apply to pregnancy centers that don't offer abortion. So Kelly Wilcox, who's the executive director of Clearway Clinic, was testifying last night in East Hampton against one of these proposed ordinances. You know, as someone who works in the space and trying to push back against this and to educate the local city councilors, within hours, her own clinic out in Worcester was one of the ones that was had the window smashed and was spray painted.
Amazing.
So, you know, maybe Jane's Revenge was listening in to the city council meeting and targeted her.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a coincidence, but
Yeah.
that's the type of that's what pro-lifers are up against right now.
Right. And they seem to do this with impunity. Like you mentioned, there have been 50 or so such instances as pregnancy resource centers and the like being vandalized. Imagine if abortion clinics were being vandalized.
Oh, my word.
If one abortion clinic.
We would never stop hearing about it.
Yeah. And I doubt that many people have really heard that much about these. I mean, you've heard some, but people would be up in arms, and the Department of Justice, would be all over it. So we've won a major battle, but the fight continues. And the fight continues with kindness, for the meek will inherit the land. Joining me now is Kelly Wilcox. Kelly is the executive director of Clearway Clinic and has been for over 10 years. In her role, Kelly has been responsible for the strategic leadership of the organization. Clearway operates 2 women's health clinics in Worcester and Springfield. Prior to serving at Clearway, she worked as a global program manager for Nokia mobile phones. Kelly and her husband, Paul, have just celebrated 25 years of marriage. So welcome, Kelly, and thank you so much for joining me today, and congratulations on 25 years of marriage.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Rollo, and thank you. It was a joy just last weekend, 25 years. We're so excited.
That's a great milestone, especially in today's culture. But I wanted to ask you a number of things about Clearway Clinic, but before I do that, I was just curious when I received your bio to find out what motivated your transition from being a global program manager for Nokia mobile phones to working for Clearway Clinic.
Oh boy, that is a God story in and of itself, but I'll give you the short version. I had worked in corporate for 25 years and had managed to make millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars for companies that I worked for. While I enjoyed it, there was just something that I felt like I could be doing so much more than just making money for people. Not that I mind making money for people. It pays people. And, it's great. But, after 25 years, I said, I've had enough. And I really feel like that 25 years was preparation for what God would bring me to. And I moved to Massachusetts. We're originally from California, actually. But we came here because my husband was with Bose, just retired after 33 years. And we came to Massachusetts to work for Bose. So that's how I ended up here. And I left corporate with this idea and heart that I wanted to do more than just make a lot of widgets and sell a lot of widgets. And that's how I ended up at what was then Compassion Pregnancy. Back then, we were a pregnancy resource center, and we ran a baby boutique of free baby items, and we did post-abortion help groups, and we did parenting classes, but we didn't have any medical services. And you can see how my 25 years in corporate was then applied to then transforming our organization into a medical organization.
Well, it's funny how God works that way and using our lives in the past to help us going forward. Was there any kind of particular episode or event that helped facilitate that transition?
Well, I remember going on vacation with my husband on a long hike, and I said, I want to do something meaningful with my life, and I want to serve in disaster relief. And so I left, and I came to Compassion Pregnancy, and it became very clear that we were going to either close or become a medical organization. And one of the people at the time that asked me to serve said, Kelly, this is disaster relief.
Yes, right. I was just going to say that.
You are helping people in the most important decisions that they will ever make, and you are helping them avoid a disaster. And so that always stuck with me, and I felt like, okay.
Well, I guess you were well prepared in disasters, having come from California, one blue state to another, and you know, we're both kind of cultural disasters, I guess you could say. And speaking of disasters...
It's a mission field.
Yes, it is a mission field. The reason I called you at the time that I did was that I was recently interviewing Andrew Beckwith of Massachusetts Family Institute. I don't know if you know him in particular, but...
Oh, yes, I love Andrew. He's been a very wise help to us for many years.
Yes, I thought you probably were quite familiar, because he was definitely familiar with you, and it just so happened I was interviewing him earlier in the month, just when we were talking about the Roe v. Wade overturning and related things that MFI is doing. And while I was interviewing, he had gotten a text. And so it was breaking news at the time that your clinic, the Clearway Clinic, had been vandalized. And so when I found out about this, and he also told me that you had been in East Hampton speaking, I think he said, to the city council. And it just so happened that either that night or the next night, the clinic was vandalized. Can you tell us about how that whole thing went down?
Yes, well, do you remember, we're dating ourselves, but the worldwide sports episode on Sundays, and they always started the segment with, you know, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat.
Yes.
You remember that?
Oh, yes, with a guy falling off of the ski jump, right?
Yes. And so for many of us, since the Dobbs decision, there has been this sense of victory, right?
Right.
But we're in a state where they are experiencing it as the agony of defeat, right? Mm-hmm. So here we are, in a sense, behind lines, and we are celebrating the thrill of victory in an environment that is suffering the agony of defeat.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and so that's actually, you know, in their emotional reaction to defeat, we have been dragged before the East Hampton City Council, then the Worcester City Council, then we've had our facilities vandalized, and then we've had our U.S. Senator and other elected officials making comments about us. And it's just really brought to our attention, you know, we've been so focused on serving women and children.
Yeah.
And we have already said for 22 years, look, MFI's got our back, MCFL's got our back. Yep. They're doing the education. They're doing the lobbying. We're going to focus on women and children. Mm-hmm. And we're not political organizations, right? We're helping women.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where we've been for 22 years.
Yeah.
And then the Dobbs decision happened. And now we have somewhat of an existential threat to our organization. And I think it's our responsibility to go out now and educate, because what they're saying is categorically false and demonstrably so. So we don't have lobbyists like the abortion industry does, but we have a requirement to speak up for what we are doing and how we are serving the community. So that's it's been a big wake-up call for us that we can't just be focused on women and children anymore. We have to educate our legislators about the great work that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious. You say you were dragged in front of the East Hampton City. Can you say what that was all about? Well,
that's a poor choice of words on my part.
Okay.
Just being someone that's normally an introvert, focusing on women and children, and having to go speak to government officials is not my preferred daily activity. But no, they had a public hearing and I went to speak on behalf of our organization. That's the correct way to
I
say
see.
it.
I'm sure it felt like being dragged, but
that was on me, not on them. They were very welcoming.
Oh, well,
and
that's
they listened.
good. That's good. Well, what prompted that? Did they call you and ask you to come talk about the clinic, or what prompted the hearing?
The East Hampton City Council was proposing legislation similar to that in Cambridge and Somerville. So that legislation is being brought up at various city councils across the state. And so then it was East Hampton, and now it's Worcester. So they're considering these types of ordinances that would have serious consequences for a mission like Clearway. And so we're there to represent our voice and speak up. And Worcester was great. We had 4 clients come to speak on our behalf, and we found out 4 o'clock the night before.
Wow.
So I'm just excited that we have all these people that we have served over these years. We've served over 10,000 that would come in public and share these very personal stories in front of cameras, on TV.
Yeah, that was very courageous.
To help us get our voice out.
So, and all of this was prompted just by the overturning of Roe v. Wade, or had they been sort of on your case beforehand?
No, that actually one of the Worcester City Council members even said that himself in voting against it. He said, I've been on the City Council 9 years. We've been serving Worcester for 22 years.
Yeah.
And there's never been a complaint. And now this is coming up, and he himself said, well, the timing is rather suspect. Whether it's actually a true correlation or not, I don't know, but it is something, a reasonable person would ask with the timing.
Right. I guess it was actually rather close in the Worcester City Council. Wasn't it something like 6-5? They decided to move forward. I'm not quite sure what moving forward means. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Considering we've never done any public advocacy or education about what we do or invited anyone to come, it was incredible just speaking there and describing exactly what we do. We had a 5-5 vote, and the mayor actually broke the tie. So all that happened well, I shouldn't say all that happened. It went to their legal department to draft up something.
I see.
Because even the council members themselves spoke about the concerns for some of the constitutional issues that were raised with the ordinance.
Right.
Requiring us to refer for abortion, requiring us to give abortifacients, for instance. Then there were real practical things like who's going to manage it. What's the definition? There's some real concerns even from them about this proposal. So it went to legal to draft something for them to consider.
Well, hopefully it dies there, because you having been in California, you may be already aware of that they had a law in California called the Reproductive Fact Act, was how they, I'm not sure what the acronym FACT stood for, but basically it was requiring or compelling pregnancy resource centers to refer for abortion, or to make it known where they can go. That got appealed. In fact, it was called NIFLA versus Becerra. So that was the National Institute of Family and Life Advocates versus Becerra, who was the Attorney General in California, and who now, unfortunately, is the head of Health and Human Services for the federal government. But that decision in 2018, it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said you can't do that. Telling California you can't compel private entities that have no connection with government whatsoever to order them to advertise about abortion. Did you have wind of that when you were in California?
Well, I've been here. I was here when that case was decided, and of course we were following it very closely because it would have, had national implications.
Yeah, that's right, because you had already moved to Massachusetts when that came down.
And I think their strategy was really just to wear us down.
Yeah.
But I don't think they understand that our motivation is really loving and caring for people,
Right.
And really preventing them from disaster in their life. And if a woman comes to us after we've given her full informed consent, we've given her an ultrasound, and she goes and leaves our facility without a referral, obviously, and ends her pregnancy, at least we've done all we can to give her full informed consent. Because one of the things we hear over and over again with people we help with post-abortion care is, if only I had seen an ultrasound, I wouldn't have had an abortion. And the second thing they say, no one ever told me I was going to hurt this bad. And that is very motivating, because day after day after day we help women and men, frankly, who have suffered from abortion.
Yes.
So if they ultimately choose that, that's what they choose, right? But we need to help them be wise and have the information about the possible overall health concerns, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And then also to know that we're here, if they do make that decision, we're here to help, because the abortion clinics are not generally offer that kind of service.
No, they don't do any follow-up service. If you choose something else, well, you're kind of on your own. And they charge for their services, you can be sure of that, but Clearway Clinic and other pregnancy resource centers don't charge anything.
Yeah, no, we don't charge for our services. We each year we reach out to our supporters, and God always provides. We served, I think it was 622 women and children last year, and we're able to do that because people support what we do, right?
Yes.
They believe in what we do.
Yeah.
Even those who believe in abortion still support what we do, because you don't have to be pro-abortion you can give someone and understand that abortion is a last resort for women. And as a community, we should do everything to help her choose a life-giving decision.
Tune in next time to hear more of the wonderful work performed by Clearway Clinic and all of the dedicated volunteers who walk with women in their hour of need. And until next time, remember, we should always treat life with care and respect, and at the very least, we should first do no harm.
First Do No Harm with Dr. Mark Rollo is produced at WQPH 89.3 FM, Shirley, Fitchburg. We are very happy to share it with other networks.
Thank you for tuning in to First Do No Harm. Dr. Rollo welcomes your questions and comments. You may contact him at markrollo978@gmail.com. That's MARKROLLO978@gmail.com. Thank you, and until next week, remember, first do no harm.